Howdy, it's Kyle, counting down the names of the 50 states. And a name is the most basic thing that a place can have. It can be descriptive of the land. It can be the first impression of the first people that saw the land. It can be named after a person. There are all types of things that give a place a name. So in this video, I'm going to count down which states have the best ones. I'm not going by how the name actually sounds, so it's not like, say, Mississippi is kind of a funny sounding word, but it's more what the word actually means. So if it's a word in a different language, whether it be indigenous, Spanish, French, or whatever, it'll be what the word actually means, not the way it sounds. And also, any kind of video like this, whether it's me ranking the flags or the state capitals or the welcome signs or whatever it happens to be, it's all this entirely my opinion. So all of these ranking videos, consider them more like an overview of the state names, just presented in my personal favorite order. The worst state name is New Mexico. I don't think it's good to have another country's name in your state name. So for it to be New Mexico, I think is a very poor name for a state. Indiana simply means land of the Indians. So that's not a very good name, especially considering that so many of the names of states are indigenous words. So for this simply to be land of Indians isn't really a great name. Wyoming takes its name from a Delaware indigenous word for large plain or prairie, and it was named this in Pennsylvania first, but people in Wyoming liked the word, so they named it Wyoming as well. I always thought New York is meant to be like New, the place of York in England, but it's actually named after the Duke of York, who later became King James II, so overall not a great name for a state. Now, New Hampshire is one where it's meant to be New Hampshire, the place in England, which is in the south central portion of the country. So I don't think it's a great name for a state when it's new version of another country again. So not a great name for a state. And very similarly, New Jersey is named after Jersey, an island, part of the UK. So another, new version of an old place. Not a great name for a state. At 43 and 44 are Virginia and West Virginia, which are both named after the same person, Queen Elizabeth I, who was known as the Virgin Queen. So, I don't know, when it's named after a monarch from the old lands, not a great name. Along those same lines, 41 and 42 are North and South Carolina, which I always thought were named after the wife of a queen, but they're named after King Charles, and Carolus is Charles in Latin, so North and South Carolina reference King Charles. Louisiana is named after Louis XIV or King Louis XIV, and again, named after a monarch from the old land. Not a great name for a state nowadays. Delaware is named after Lord Delaware or Sir Thomas West, who was the first governor of the Virginia colony. Now, technically, it's named after the Delaware River, but that was named after Lord Delaware. So either way, it's named after that guy, an old guy from the old land. Georgia is another state named after an old monarch, King George II, who was granted the first charter for Georgia in 1732. And the last of the ones named after one of the monarchs or monarch family is Maryland, which is named after Queen Henrietta Maria, who was the wife of King Charles. Iowa is simply the French name given to local indigenous groups they encounter there. It's not the actual name of the groups, just what the French decided to call them. Illinois is another one where it's simply a French name given to the local indigenous groups, and the word means speaks normally. So, that isn't insulting or anything like that. Look at these savages over here. They speak normally. Maine is one where no one's quite sure where it got its name from, but King Charles ordered the colony to be named the province of Maine, spelled M-A-Y-N-E, but what that means or what it references, nobody really knows. Washington is named after George Washington, the first president of the United States, but at the time the state was named, the capital was already Washington. There were many Washington counties throughout the country, so I don't think naming a state Washington at the time that it was really a good idea. And from this point forward, I like all of the names, so I'm going to just be kind of picking nits here with how I decide to rank them. Massachusetts is Algonquin, that means near the Great Hill, so I'm not sure exactly which hill this references, but Massachusetts isn't known for its big hills for the most part, so not the best name. Kentucky is a Seneca word that means on the prairie or meadow, which is a pretty interesting word, but when I think of Kentucky, I think of rolling hills and mountains, not prairies and meadows, so maybe not the best name for this place. Oklahoma is a Choctaw word that means red people, so this isn't an offensive term that Europeans came and called these the red people. This is the actual local term for the people that live there, the red people. Tennessee takes its name from the Cherokee town of Tennessee, but maybe it's not the best name for an overall state to be just what was a town for the Cherokee. Alabama is a Creek word that means a clearing or an area where you gather vegetation. So interesting term, but that really could be anywhere. It's not really specific to Alabama, but still kind of a cool word. Arizona is O'odham. I'm not sure how to pronounce that tribal word, but it means silver-bearing spring, which is really cool, even though it may not be the first thing you think of when you think of Arizona, but still a pretty cool word. It is not some kind of Spanish derivative of arid zone being a desert. Utah is named after the Ute Indians, which is the largest indigenous group in the state, although Utah itself is a Spanish word for the group. Similarly, Kansas is the French variation of the name of the Kaw tribe or the Kansa, but the word itself means south wind or people from the south. Very similarly, Arkansas is an indigenous term that means south wind or people from the south, but I think it's more fitting for Arkansas, being that Arkansas is an actual southern state, so Arkansas is the land of the people from the south. Montana is simply Spanish for mountain, so the name of the state is Mountain. That's either genius or really dumb, but either way, I think it works pretty well for Montana, being it is a very mountainous state in the western half of the state. All these years, up until the time I did the research for this video, I thought Rhode Island was in reference to the Greek island of Rhodes, but Rhode is actually the Dutch word for red, so it means red island in reference to Aquidneck Island. Pennsylvania simply means Penn's Woods, named after the founder William Penn, so pretty fitting term. At 19 and 20 are North and South Dakota, and Dakota is the Sioux word for friend, so really good name for these states, friend. Very similarly is Texas, which is a Caddo word, Tashos, which means friends or allies. So it's pretty interesting that Texas and the Dakotas have basically the same name, but in different languages. Most of the rest are simply descriptive of the area, and Vermont is French for Green Mountain, although in French it would be stated as Mont Vert, but either way, perfect name, very fitting for the area. Nevada, or Spanish Nevada, means snow-covered, in reference to all the mountains in the state. Colorado is Spanish, it means red-colored, which is very fitting because much of the western portion of the state is a very red color. Florida is another Spanish word that means flowery or full of flowers, in specific reference to the Easter season, and the Spanish stumbled upon Florida during the Easter season and named the area Florida. Oregon takes its name from the indigenous name for the Columbia River, although there is a little dispute over how it got its name, but if it is for the Columbia River, good name for the state. Ohio is the Seneca word for either good river or large creek in reference to the Ohio River, so very fitting name for that state. Wisconsin is a Miami word which means river running through a red place, and this is in reference to the red sandstone bluffs of Wisconsin Dells. Really cool name for a state, really nice area as well. Connecticut is a Mohegan term which means beside the long tidal river in reference to the Connecticut River, so again another very fitting name for the state. Minnesota is a Sioux word which means cloudy water, so perfect name for a state where the northern half is pretty much just all lakes and water. Nebraska is an Oto word which means flat water, and that's in reference to the Platte River, which is a pretty slow moving river that goes across basically the entire stretch of Nebraska. Very good name for that state. Mississippi is an Ojibwe word, and it simply means great river. Could there possibly be a better name for Mississippi than Great River? And then there's Michigan, a Chippewa word which means great water or large water. Could there possibly be a better name for Michigan than that? And then Alaska, which is an Aleut word which means great land. So, Great River, Mississippi, great water, Michigan, great land, Alaska, perfect. All right, people probably aren't going to like my top 4, but at number 4 is Missouri, which is the Miami term which means a dugout wooden canoe people. So these are people really good at building dugout canoes. I love canoes. I got to put Missouri high on this one. California takes its name from a beautiful fictional island mentioned in a novel written in the year 1510. And when the Spanish explorers first stumbled upon it, the first thing they thought when they saw this beautiful land was this fictional island from this book. So pretty cool way to get that name. Hawaii takes its name from Hawaii Loa, who was the mythical discoverer of the island. So kind of like a god figure who discovered the place in legend. So really cool name for the state. And a lot of folks might have what I have number 1 as number 50, but I think it's great, and that's Idaho. It's literally a made-up term. Some dude just made up this word and claimed it was an indigenous term that meant mountain gems, and he tried to get what would be later Colorado to be called this, but the Colorado folks caught on to him and said, hey, go away, you idiot. But then he went to Idaho, and he was able to get the Idaho folks to go along with this and call the state Idaho. So I doubt that Idaho did not know that this word was made up, so it's got to be totally tongue in cheek, which is why I love it and why Idaho, I think, has the best name for a state in the country. So that's my ranking of the states' names, and like I was saying at the beginning of the video, it's all just my opinion, so don't get too upset about this. And I wanted to just kind of go over the state names and what they mean and what they represent, because it's kind of interesting, is a lot of these names are indigenous or foreign languages, so we don't always know what they actually mean. But anyway, I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please give me a thumbs up to let me know you approve, and subscribe to this channel if you're interested in learning more about U.S. geography. I'm talking about the U.S., Canada, Mexico, the Caribbean, talking about cities and counties and states, and this channel tends to be a little bit nerdier than others, so check it out if that kind of stuff is interesting to you. So yeah, thanks for watching. Geography King, signing out.